I know political ads can bring more confusion and questions rather than actual awareness to an issue. From signs that make a mockery, or by confusing fact with opinion. So I'd like to actually present some pros and cons of an issue that we're facing here in Gilbert right now on question number 1. Now, what I probably don't have to explain is that bonds are used by towns to actually pay for projects, much like this fire department that I'm out front standing in front of, station number 9 here in Gilbert. This is actually part of the $127 million bond or debt that the city currently has, and the property tax, the 1% property tax that we pay here in Gilbert, is actually going to pay that bond or that debt off. It's actually scheduled in the next 20 years to be paid off. Now, what the city is actually proposing to do is take out another bond to pay for additional facilities as training facilities to train recruits coming up in the police and fire department. Our entire force, most of it, at least 85% of it, is scheduled to retire in the next 7 years. And the city of Gilbert went around to surrounding towns to try to offer them even money, up to $6 million, to help assist in our training of our force. They went to Mesa and Chandler and even as far as Glendale, but because of their growth and their limited resources, they have been unable to help the town of Gilbert. So what are some pros and cons that nobody's mentioning? Well, the current city council is right in stating that it would not need to raise taxes because the current estimated table of 1% would pay for the majority of the $85 million bond and build the facility. How is that possible though? How can that happen without raising taxes? Well, the current debt of $127 million is scheduled to be paid off in 20 years, and tax rates are estimated to actually decrease around 2021 if no more new debt is obtained. And that means that the current property tax rate of 1% would start to decrease as early as 2020 if no new debt was acquired. And by state law, the town had to put out a conservative 1% annual appreciation study based on just 1% increase every year and budget for taxes and, of course, this new debt acquired. However, the idea of a 1% annual appreciation is not actuality, and what most home values and appreciation have been doing is anywhere from 7 to 9% in Gilbert, a lot of the communities that I go into and analyze, as well as the surrounding towns and cities on it. Now, let me remind everybody that the annual average is about 3.4%, so that's probably a more realistic number on both sides of this question that they should be using. And if home values did increase annually by only 1%, then the city would have to increase the property tax by 10%, but only for 2 years. By 2022, those same scheduled decreases would start taking effect after the 2020 increase of 10%. So we're only talking about 2 years, really, in all actuality. The current city's council's proposal is actually taking a more realistic model based on those increased values and continuing to increase higher than a 1% appreciation. So that's why that the property rate wouldn't need to be increased and even still be gradually decreased in the future if, of course, future needs and budgets were not changed. Now, there are a couple of points that I think both sides of the question have not considered. One, our growth is not inside a bubble compared to surrounding towns. Just like the town of Gilbert needed to actually borrow resources from other generous towns, we have neighbors that will probably benefit from the building of this facility. And they will actually desperately need those resources once they reach the same situation that we're in, and probably actually offset the cost over the next 20 years by paying something just like we try to offer other towns. Queen Creek and Santan are rapidly growing. Santan is actually striving for dire legislation to self-incorporate and soon might have the right legislation to achieve that. 2, the Home Price Expectation Survey is put out every quarter, and it's done by 100 of the top leading bankers and economists in the country. They actually predict the home valuations over the next 5 years. And for years, they've been predicting that there's going to be a slow off of appreciation around the year 2021. Now, there are multiple factors that have gone into this idea, but one of them actually is the growth of the economy and every town like ours. See, Gilbert, just like a lot of other towns in the nation, took out bonds just before 2005 and just before the Great Recession. And they know that that payoff schedule and the tax deductions will begin around 2021 for most places. So if growth doesn't happen, if cities don't expand, if taxes are not maintained at the current level, then the economy could stall and decrease along with those taxes. At least that's the theory and how it goes, and the fear along with it. So that might not be a good thing if you don't want government to expand and grow as well. Now, with both of those points said, I believe the training facility is actually in the best interest of the community. The other option is that we could revisit this in 4 years and see if it's still necessary. But with a 2-year build time and 4 years on top of that, we're looking at only 1 year left to train these new recruits before the majority of the force is set to retire. And I just don't think that's enough time professionally to train. So meeting this anticipation in advance could actually be good for the community, not only just for the obvious, safety factors, but maybe even for the surrounding communities that we call neighbors, as well as the economy.